All right. So I'm excited to be here today with my new friend, Sarah Beth Perry. So Sarah is the founder and CEO of With the Band. She created Fan Crew, which is a platform that helps artists to connect and monetize their fan base through features like private messaging, virtual meet and greets, and live streams, all at no startup cost for artists. She's also been a fan engagement leader since 2017. She's launched successful fan activations, including the Jonas Brothers Comeback Project and Kacey Musgraves Rainbow Project. She's an award-winning entrepreneur, recognized as one of Belmont University's top 100 alumni entrepreneurs, winning multiple grants and competitions from CMA, Sigma, and Launch Tennessee. So I'm really excited to have her on the podcast today to talk about the connection between artists and fans and what are some of the best ways that as an independent artist, you can build a real community and things like a fan club around what you're doing with your music. So, Sarah, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yes, of course. Thanks for the intro. I know that's long-winded I've stayed in one segment of the industry most of my time, but I feel like I'm in such a niche part that most people have no idea what I'm talking about.
Nah, you're definitely speaking my language. I mean, all these things are very cool. And so maybe to kick things off for anyone who this is their first time connecting with you, could you share a little bit about your story and how you came to be a part of the Jonas Brothers projects and Kacey Musgraves, as well as the platform that you've built?
Totally. So I started, I feel like as most music industry and music lovers start, as just a huge music fan. I grew up in Nashville, had no idea. I moved to Atlanta in like middle high school and remember thinking, talking just about my normal life in Nashville. Had no idea it was weird to know artists. I thought artists existed everywhere. I thought the music industry was just a normal job looking back. My parents were the only ones who weren't in music out of all my friends' parents. Mine were in healthcare, which is the other big like Nashville industry. But kind of was so surrounded by it, I had no idea it wasn't an option, if that makes sense. And then as I got older, my sister and I became the typical like teenage fangirls, loved all the boy bands. First band I like ever remember loving were the Jonas Brothers. So that's like create was such a big full circle moment for me getting to work with them in 2019. But
You're basically living my wife's dream life. She's a huge Joe's Bro fan.
like not gonna lie, I think like every girl my age, I'm 28, like thought they were gonna marry a Jonas brother at some point in their life. So knowing that like it was so full circle of, they had inspired me to like music and I kind of joke in other ways I've started two companies kind of because of them. And just my love for fandom really grew from that. In the I guess it was like late 2000s, mid 2000s. And now getting to work in all different genres, it's like one of the biggest things I always tell either students or people who are trying to get in the music industry is like being a fan is your superpower. If you are a hardcore fan, like you've learned, oh, this marketing campaign worked really well, or this single fell really flat because they like didn't do XYZ. And you are taking that in as a fan, and then you don't realize it until you're trying to implement with artists, like how much that can transfer into a job.
Yeah, I mean, just being a receiver and being a super fan can absolutely give you context to understand what works and what's not working, what you want. Cool. Could you share a little bit about just the details of what was the comeback project and how exactly did that work?
I always say, like, there's every reason this shouldn't have worked. Like, everything was stacked against the odds for me in this one. And what we really did, so I started working on like building with the band when I was in school at Belmont University. And I was a double major in music business entrepreneurship. Always knew I wanted to do something in both of those spaces, but didn't really know what until I started working on artist teams and then saw that, as a fan, I kind of felt this disconnect. But then on the artist teams, they had like no idea what they were doing when it came to like, how do you listen to a fan base to then know what to implement and just like make better decisions? And what kind of happened is I started making a list of what are these qualities of like my dream job, the dream company I want to work for? What do they do? And a lot of that was just like making sure everyone in the equation is benefiting, like no one's getting screwed over. I feel like a lot of the companies that were out there were either like so pro artist or so pro fan, and one of them was getting screwed over. And so that's kind of where it started. And initially, we ended up launching an app in 2019 that enabled fans and artists to create and participate in fan projects and fan meetups. So you don't know the like fandom world, fan projects and fan meetups are things that fans have done for, hundreds of years by themselves. And it's evolved how they've done that. I think in like, you think about Jonas Brothers, like One Direction, those boy band days, it was almost all on Twitter was like the home base. In Jonas Brothers days, there was like, there used to be the 90s, like forum fan club sites and, MySpace. And it goes back. There's even like fan clubs you can find from like the opera days in the 1700s, which is crazy. But we ended up launching this app. Fans are creating fan projects and meetups all over the world. And this was the Jonas Brothers project was the way of thinking like, oh, this is kind of like how we can announce that we launch. I was thinking of this as a way to get fans to know about what we're doing. I was like, okay, it'll be a benefit that the artists will know, but I had no idea there'd be as much like artist interest that early on with someone who had everything stacked up against me. Like at the time I was, I just had graduated Belmont in May, like very little full-time music industry experience. Yes, I hustled my absolute butt off like for now it's the past 10 years, but there's a lot of reasons that I thought people would not believe in what I'm doing, whether that's because I'm young, I don't have experience. I am trying to bring a concept that is this like teenage fangirl that's looked down upon in the music industry, like to light. And kind of the whole idea I saw was I feel like there's such a power of the fan that has not been harnessed. And how basically do you take that and nurture it from the artist side to then like the fans are supporting the artist supports the fan, and it just snowballs. And so that's what I feel like I try to create, like still to this day with any project or any like client that I'm working with. It's like, how do we make that cycle and that funnel? So not only are the fans supporting you, but you're supporting your fans. And so initially what for the Jonas Brothers project, what happened was we printed out 16,000 signs that said, thank you for coming back to us. So if you don't know much about the Jonas Brothers history, they were banned for, I don't know, maybe like 10 years, broke up. Like obviously they're brothers, it's in the name. But like they didn't do Christmas together. Like they were really a lot of tension. So it was a really big deal that they came back. This was on their reunion tour. And, I was just hoping this would go like semi well. I had no idea it would have the impact that it did. So we created these 16,000 signs that said, thank you for coming back to us. They had a song called Come Back. And so it had instructions on the back for the fan to hold it up during that song, which is kind of like midway through the show.
1,000 signs, a lot of signs.
A lot. And just like walked in with those clear bags full. I think there was like 9 of us who went in and did it. Again, this was the first time. If you haven't seen fan projects or fan meetups, they're usually on a scale of like 30 people. Like it's a fan trying to do something as a give back to the artist, and they're usually very disorganized. And that's kind of what we were trying to help solve. And so I had never seen one in person, like of this size. I had no idea if it was going to work. And it did. And they honestly ended up like working out even better than I could have just like handwritten it myself, because during the song, they kind of each pop up on a podium one at a time. So only one at a time was seeing what was happening. And like you're getting their reaction before the even like 2 other guys have come up out of the stage. And so it ended up with like all 3 of the guys sobbing, crying on stage. Like I joke when I have a bad day, I'll go watch the YouTube video. Like Joe Jonas' face is like sopping wet. That makes me feel bad.
I almost guarantee that if I tell this story to my wife, she's gonna know exactly this. Like she might have even like been there for watching this. I know that she has been out to many of the Jonas Brothers shows.
I had no idea it would go over that well, and it was like trending on Twitter for 2 days, and everyone on Twitter was like, who the heck like did this? Because this concept of a company helping to do this has like never existed. Kind of the closest thing that exists is like within the K-pop realm. They're so ahead of the game within fan engagement. It's crazy. But they do a lot of these more like fan meetups, fan projects on larger scales. But they are, again, a little bit supported by the artists in the fact they have platforms that help them do it and all these things. So this is kind of my idea of like bringing this community back of the fan club of the, like let's all support each other. And I think we've all met so many of our best friends through music. And that's what I've always said my goal is like when someone says they've met through my platform and they hang out, like that is what keeps me going every day, because when I look back on my life, like there's so many specific friends who I was friends with because of a band, or we went to all these shows together this one summer or whatever. And that's definitely my special part. I know I'm going on such a tangent. But yeah, that's kind of how we did the Jonas Brothers project. And from that, just got a way more artist interest after the fact too, because I thought, and fans were super excited. Like, I stayed up, I think, for like 32 hours after that happened because I just couldn't sleep. And our socials were blowing up, and everything was like trying to answer all the messages and emails, and just making sure I set it up well because we had just launched. So it was crazy and whirlwind, but it was like one of the best moments of my life. I was sobbing, crying too. Like it was pretty crazy.
That's so cool. So it sounds like the platform that you've built is really, as a super fan yourself, you've seen how challenging it can be for people to be organized and to create projects together to support the artist. And now with this platform, fans are able to come together to create projects and stay organized. I don't know how much you know about Modern Musician or the software as a service that we've been developing, but it's called Street Team. And it's basically with that same heart in mind in terms of connecting artists and fans. So I would love to explore integrations and ways that people can use the platforms together.
Yeah, because we need it. It's like, we started with this whole fan project stuff, and then it was going great, and then COVID hit. And so we couldn't do arena size events anymore like everyone else. And that's what sent me on a deep dive of like, okay, what tools are out there for artists? And really just saw like, because I've been on both sides, I have like such a heart for both sides. Cause now working on artist teams, I want them to get the best deal. For fans, I want them to get the best deal. And there were so few tools that were benefiting everyone. Like, great, you can text your audience, but it costs a lot of money and you don't even own the data. And the fan thinks they're texting you and having a relationship with you, and then you can't move it. And so I basically just made a list of all the things that I knew from my friends and colleagues who worked at like marketing and labels or managers on what they liked or disliked, because there are so many bad tools out there. So it's much needed.
100%. Cool. I mean, it is just interesting, like the landscape of the music industry right now on the online in terms of things like Spotify, where on one hand, it's more accessible than ever to like listen to music and stream it unlimited. But on the other hand, it's so difficult to actually build a real relationship or build a community or contact those people. So that's amazing that the platform you built kind of helps to bridge that gap. I'm wondering, having both the experience of being a fan and also working with artists and seeing the kind of where those two come together. What do you say are some of the biggest issues or challenges that you see right now in the music industry as it relates to building fan communities? And what have you seen that are creative things that artists are doing right now to kind of overcome those challenges?
That's a really great question. I think two of the main things. One's kind of more of a day-to-day, how do we fix this issue? I think the biggest thing is data. And the music business is funny because a lot of times I heard it was a man on a panel like probably 7 years ago at a Billboard Touring Awards. And he was saying, if you look at any other industry, like a consumer goods, a car company, a like whatever, they make their products based on what the customer wants. And music industry is the only thing that like we make the product based on what the artist wants and then put it out. And so it's not as like consumer centric. And that really stuck with me because I think we're slowly shifting away from that, slowly and fast, in the sense of like TikTok. I was having this conversation yesterday with some people in Nashville about how everyone's now like testing out a single on TikTok before they even name that it's a single of the album. So they're putting out 3 songs and seeing which one does best. And that's what they're going to declare the single. And so it has a pro and a con of you're able to reach more people than you ever have before. And there's so much out there that you like really have to make an impact in. I think there's something very true to, for an artist side, like I say, I don't play guitar, piano, anything. I don't Nashville play. I can't play like Keith Urban. I can play like 4 chords,
Hey, if you got 4 chords, you can play a lot of things.
But I think that's one of the hardest things with dealing with artists on a daily basis is having that conversation of how much they should be creating for themselves versus other people. And where I've seen the true people just like absolutely shine is when they're creating music for themselves, but the way they release it is in a strategic way for the audience they want to have. I think that's where you see artists who are the happiest too, because then they've garnered this fan base of people who like them for who they are and not some like false image. So on that tangent of data, going back to it, there's just a lot of the things they're using they don't get any data from. And so whether that's Instagram or TikTok, they can see these overarching demographics, but they can't message like Susie Lou from Wisconsin when they have a new single because Instagram will show them their post to like 7% of their audience. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest trends I'm seeing within music is like, how do you own your audience and getting back to that? And then on the other hand, I think one of the things I would, regret not talking about is this whole thing of like crazy fans. And we're seeing like Chappell Roan talk a lot about it. And then some other artists coming out. And I think there really is a fine line of like fans being respectful versus not. And I do think there are some like strategies you can put in place. And even, like platforms like we're talking about where you're having those relationships. So then when you're in person, like you can set a little bit more of a barrier. And obviously, like we want to keep everyone safe. And so learning what those like boundaries are for the artist and really like creating the whole strategy, the album strategy, the socials, that everything around their boundaries. Because I think a lot of people today say like, oh, well, you have to do content, like this sucks and it takes a lot of time. But then I have artists like Zach Top who, like, if you watch his content, you can go and look. It's all content of just him singing. He's not doing any like crazy little TikTok dance or random trend. Like he came up on my For You page last night because he was riding a scooter apparently around like some random city and doing something funny, but he doesn't create content like that. And I think a lot of times people argue that you have to create that content to be a big artist now. And I just don't think that's true. I think you have to find what is your like differentiator and then just lean into that, but move the whole strategy around.
Awesome. Yeah, lots of good stuff there. So it sounds like one of the big things is around data and fan and ownership of that data, where on the social media platforms, artists don't really have the ability to directly connect with those fans. They have to rely on like the algorithm to kind of show their content. So you're seeing a move towards more ownership of things like maybe email lists, platforms where you have that direct fan connection. One interesting point that you brought up was around the market and how generally with products and businesses, you have a service that's fulfilling a need, and the need kind of comes first, and then like people create the product to kind of fulfill that. Whereas with like artwork, with music, that you're actually starting with the authentic, music, and then kind of reverse engineering it. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that specific topic for an artist who's maybe listening to this right now, who hasn't established a community or kind of that fan relationship yet, who maybe feel a little bit like they're out on their own and like the middle of an ocean. They're like, I don't even know, like I've got this music and I'm trying to be like authentic and share it, but also like at the same time I need to build a community and I need to kind of serve a need for the community. What are some of the best strategies and things that you found that kind of help artists to be able to make that connection?
So one spot I start with a lot of like either beginning artists or people even just getting into music and they're trying to learn, like on the business side, trying to learn how do you support an artist, market an artist, is like building a ideal fan persona. I think where we've seen a lot of artists like struggle are when they try to basically like switch their target audience. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like obviously the absolute best person who's done this has been like Shania Twain, Taylor Swift, like these ones who come from country and go to other genres. But, we've seen some like epically fail in this and then they go back to their original genre. And one of the biggest things is that when you're starting out, you have to figure out what is my ideal fan. Like I go super in depth. We even have like a thing on the With the Band website you can go look at that's like a fan engagement workbook, and it goes through this persona building. I do this with like every artist we work with. When we bring in a new client, like our whole team does this together. because it helps in every decision you make of where does this fan like shop in person. So you kind of start higher level of like their age, what's the average age, their gender, where do they live, like what language do they speak, and then get down to specifics of like where do they shop in person, what social media platform are they spending the most time on. And that's going to help you narrow down like what you should be spending your time on. Because I think one of the hardest things is there are so many platforms out there. It's like the analysis paralysis type thing. Like you can't decide what you want to do because there's so many options. And so if I was a new artist starting out, say I had my average fan was like a 25-year-old female, okay, I'd probably be spending more of my time on TikTok. I would be going to the venues or trying to get booked on shows that have that same audience, even if they're in a different genre. If their fan would be a fan of yours, doing partnerships with that, doing partnerships with reaching out to brands who have that same target demographic. So, like a skincare brand or a makeup brand. And those are where I see artists thrive, even when they're like smaller. I mainly work now with like medium to larger size artists, but even some of my friends who are smaller artists and, you know, make a living off of being an artist, it's because they've done this and they've made these partnerships that are quote even smaller partnerships, but it's benefiting everyone because they have a similar audience. So I would say that's my main thing is like figure out who your target fan is and work towards just getting in front of them, whether that's digitally, in person, through your personal outlets or brands or companies or your local, like anything, you know, like it's just getting in front of them.
Super smart. So it sounds like what you'd recommend starting out is trying to get clear on who is your ideal fan.
Yeah,
And once you know that, you can start to explore where do they congregate, where do they hang out, what brands are they familiar with. And from there, you might reach out to those different brands, the quote unquote influencers, and try to establish a relationship.
yeah,
And that's a good way to kind of build the initial foundation.
totally.
Cool. So maybe for someone who is wanting to go deeper into that exercise of creating their ideal fan, but maybe they're feeling a little bit like stuck or they're not really sure like how to come up with that persona. Do you have any recommendations for like ways that they can kind of reflect and figure out? Because also, you know, there is you kind of have to find where the market meets the idea too. So like you might think your ideal fans or something, then you're like, wait, oh, that's actually so. I'm curious how you recommend people go on that discovery process to kind of find and hone in on their ideal fans.
Yeah. I don't think this is like ever a process that you've ended. Like this is a process I'm doing for every artist, like at every show I'm going to. It's as simple as when you're at a show, like looking, okay, what like item of clothing are most of these people wearing? Like, are they wearing
Mm,
mostly baseball hats? Or are they mostly
mm,
wearing like sweatshirts or a certain, like, do you notice a certain brand that they're all wearing or like a trendy item? And this is something that is just like so now ingrained in me. I do it every day when I'm working. But when you're getting stuck and getting that spot, I'd say first, just like whatever you have put out there, whether that's a YouTube video, music on Spotify, you have a Facebook page, or like whatever, go and like already start looking at those demographics and spend some time there. So, you know, say if you're like a big hometown artist, so which like age group of people, even if it's just your hometown, are usually coming out to the shows, or like even specifics of like, okay, what are they spending their weekend doing? Are these people who go to a lot of shows? Are these people who just listen to playlists and don't like know who they're even listening to type thing? So starting with the data you have and making like, here's my fan now, here's my ideal fan, because those do change a lot, especially when you're starting out. And as you're growing, like, you know, one person I would argue who's changed like their fan base a good amount is like Kelsey Ballerini. I feel like she very much started like super, super country and has moved more pop. Or like actually Kacey Musgraves is a way better example. You
mm.
listen to her first album and it sounds like complete end of the spectrum from this newest one. And she's been able to do that because she made music that she believed in and that was creative outlet for her, but then they marketed it towards the correct audience. Like they did not market a like biscuits and gravy song to LA, but now they're marketing, the new album to LA. And so creating who's your target demographic now, who's your goal, and then just doing small steps to get in those spaces where your goal people are at. Like, I think it can even be as simple as like go busk and see like who's giving you money, or go just like, yeah, anywhere where you can get feedback on your music and see who's liking my music and just start there.
Super smart. Yeah, this reminds me of when my band was first starting out of high school. We were really struggling to try to figure out in Vermilion, South Dakota, how do we build an audience that's not just our friends and family? And the thing that really broke through for us was we noticed we went out to see All Time Low perform, and they were our favorite bands growing up. And they had this huge line of fans, like thousands of people waiting outside of the venue. And we thought, if someone likes All Time Low, maybe they'd like our music too. So we started walking up to those people and introducing ourselves and sharing some of our music. And I was like a super shy, awkward kid. So that process didn't come naturally at all. I was like shaking and stuttering as we walked up to people. But what we found is that the response was amazing. Like people, like those were, like you're describing, like the super fans, the people that actually come together, the ideal fans to actually go to a show and spend money to be there. And so as you're sharing this, it's just sort of like a plus one in the bucket. I'm like remembering that, I'm like, yeah, that just like shows, just like going to live shows, going and connecting with the people there seems like, oh yeah, like should I have like a V8? Like that's probably like one of the main things that everyone who wants to, build a strong connection with their fan base, like literally like people coming together for the main dedicated purpose of music is a great way to get to know others and kind of see who are the really dedicated fans.
Exactly. And I I think that's a really great tangible example of like getting in front of your target demographic, because like that's how I did all the research before I started with the band. Was I would go to these shows that I knew fans would wait outside in line for, and just like talk with them and have a conversation with them. And we've done different things, as in like just simply having conversations, to like creating a little photo booth, to like giving out branded like waters. Some amphitheaters allowed you to bring in a sealed bottle of water. And so I'm always that aspect. If any of you are readers, there's a great book called The Third Door. And it's all about this concept of like, most people try to get in the front door, some like sneak around the back, but usually there's like a third really random way that you can like sneak yourself in there. And that is how I feel like I've had most of my like random, what feels like to me success, was because I was willing to do super out of the box ideas that people are like, you can't just like go set up a photo booth outside. And it's like, well, like, why don't I try? And then if they say take it down, I take it down. And I think that's a brilliant idea. If you have an artist who has a target demographic where fans will be, go talk to them. Go like say, hey, like I actually just came out with a new song that's similar to them, or I did a cover of their song, or, anything like that. Because also like there's such this mentality of social media now that if you say you're an artist, people are like, oh, like I want to know them first. If they're really fans, like they're going to want to be in on it, even if they have no idea who you are. Like this is a random social experiment. If any of you and your friends want to do it, but like have one of your friends who's not famous, just start taking pictures with your other friends. And then people will be like, oh my gosh, like I have to take a picture too, because they think it's someone famous that they just don't know. And so I think that's how you have to be as an artist, of like fake it till you make it, and get those fans where they are, which is shows.
That's awesome. That strategy that I was talking about, it worked so well the first time that we did it. There's 6 of us in the band, and we split up into groups of 2. And for about 6.5 months, that's all I did every day, was just walking up to fans waiting lines for shows. Because of that, we ended up selling 24,000 CDs and got on the radar of All Time Low. And that was like our first breakout tour, was getting to open for All Time Low. And it's a nice reminder of the whole story, and just everything you're describing around connecting with fans. Where do they congregate? And also, I really like the out of the box ideas that you just shared, like having a photo booth. That's a brilliant idea too. Having someone actually come to like document and take photos and videos. Like I remember that, like a lot of people, we were nobody, like we were just this band from South Dakota, but a lot of people would want to take pictures with me. They'd want me to like sign their CDs. And then when people in the line saw me like signing CDs, they'd be like, "Oh, like who is this guy?" There's definitely some wisdom in there.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that's even just been more amplified with this whole like, if you didn't post it, did it happen type culture of like everyone wants to act like they're the like king hero of, the story. And so I think that's genius that y'all did that then. And I think it still works just as well today.
Cool. Well, Sarah, this has been a really fun conversation to kind of explore not only the artist side of things, but also like the fan side of things and the community. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about the platform that you've built. And for someone who's listening to this, watch this right now, who's either an artist or as like a fan of an artist, could you share a little bit more about how the platform works and how, if someone's interested, they can go sign up for it?
Yeah, totally. So our new fan crew platform really kind of was our COVID baby. It came out by me making that list of like, what do artist teams like using? What do they not like using? What do fans like using? What do they not like using? And saw kind of some of the main points we were trying to solve was like this data direct communication issue. Like how does an artist directly communicate with their fans in a easy and like not super expensive way? And it's like modern technology. You're not like, I think email lists are great, but then I feel like a big lack within fans can't talk to each other. And like that's how you build community is you have to have a group conversation. And so that was kind of the first big piece is okay, how do we get them to communicate and engage? And then realized that this also then brings the artist a way to monetize their fans, especially when we are talking in a time where like no one was making any money and seeing how this old like fan club used to be a thing where it's like you pay $20 a year and you get letters in the mail. Like the Beatles had a fan club back in the day where like every Christmas they'd send a vinyl of a Christmas song that they had like recorded. So it's, fan clubs have been a thing forever, but no one had really like updated the technology since like the 90s. And so that's purely what we did is I kind of say we're like the Patreon for like higher level talent. A little more concierge service of not only are we looking like, here's your fan club, here's the platform you can use, but it's what is your overarching strategy as an artist? Like, what's your 1 year, 5 year, 10 year vision? And then how do we use your fan club to like help market the new song that came out? Or, okay, the tour is about to be announced. How do we get your current fans to invite a friend to the show? And a little bit more strategy driven in that way. So the current fan crew platform, it zero startup cost for artists. And then it basically, when a fan purchases a fan club membership, there's a revenue split. Artists automatically get 70%. And then we deal with all the random tech, live stream, etc. fees, and then get whatever's left over at that. So one of the biggest things I saw was just all the really good solutions that were out there that these higher up artists were using were like minimum 100 grand to just start this, create their own custom app or whatever. And then they were launching them and they still weren't like performing well. And, that's how we were able to cut costs is it's all on one app. Fans can use it like mobile app, Android, Apple, or on the web. So we have fans everywhere from like our lowest age is, technically you sign things saying you're 13 years old or have like parental supervision. And I think our oldest fan that I know of was like 89. And so we really have tried to create a platform that is both fun and easy to use for the 89-year-old and the 13-year-old. And I've always said I wanted to support as like diverse artists as possible, all forms of the word, whether that's location, genre, like gender, all the things. Like, I just think there's something to be said, and I'm learning this the more we're growing the company, that so many things are so genre sideload right now. And so most people in the music industry work in these niches that they're not seeing what everyone else is doing. And we've been able to take like an idea that a Christian music artist is talking about it and bring it to like an Americana audience and see if it works with that type of audience. And it's been fascinating to just see all these ideas that some people I think have thought like could only exist in this one bubble and how it actually translates. Like, I definitely started with the band and this idea from a teenage fangirl perspective. As of right now, like the majority of the fans that are on there are these like super country fans, mostly like I'd say like 30 to 40 years old. And so it's been super interesting watching like how do we serve that audience and then how do we serve this other fandom that's a younger audience. But it's been the best challenge. I like that's my favorite part is just getting to dive deep into each individual fan base, learn all of the different like nuances, inside jokes, and then use that to the artist advantage and like how do you build a strategy to then help grow that fan base. So all that being said, you can go to like withtheband.co and check it out if you're an artist or if you're a fan, join a fan crew. A lot of fun. Each artist gets to offer whatever they want to their fans at whatever price. So it really varies. Some do like pre-sale codes, while other dues like virtual meet and greets, or like one of the most creative ones I love, Tennille Towns. After like 3 months in one of her tours, you get your name written on her like tour trailer, which I think is super cool. So you can like go take pictures with it at shows. So yeah, just go check it out. Feel free to email us if you have any questions. It's all on there, all on the website.
Awesome. Cool. So, like always, we'll put all the links in the show notes for easy access. And yeah, Sarah, I mean, I really feel a lot of alignment, and I just can really relate with you in terms of your background, what you've created. And I think there's a lot of synergy as well between what we're doing at Modern Musician and what you're building. So, looking forward to collaborating more, and highly recommend everyone that's watching this to go check out the platform.
Thanks so much. Thanks for listening. And let me know if y'all have any fan engagement questions. I'm always happy to help.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, of course. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.